Stay tuned. Disability and Progress is up next.
KFAI is supported in part by Southside Pride Monthly newspaper. Locally owned and operated in South Minneapolis, Southside Pride celebrates the racial and cultural diversity of the Southside and serves the Phillips, Hiawatha, Seward, and the Cedar Riverside neighborhoods. Information is available at southsidepride.com.
The Internet Geeks at IP House are proud supporters of KFAI Community Radio. IP House provides internet hosting and access for your community, large or small. More information is available at iphouse.com.
Bring you insights into ideas about and discussions on disability topics. My name is Sam. I'm the host of the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Tonight we have a whole slew of guests. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Where do I start? Well, first of all, we have Ann Tulloch. Hi, Ann.
Hello.
Oh, where are you? You there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Ann is a retired physical therapist, a parent of a person with a disability. We have Lynn Noren. Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
Lynn is a director of RISE and has done mega amazing things. We also have Elizabeth Schear. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Elizabeth is the director of Rock County Opportunities, a day vocational program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and you've done a lot of stuff too. And this includes brain injuries as well. We also have Stephanie Peterson. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi there.
And you're part of MNFAC?
I am part of MNFAC, which is an organization. It's an advocacy group for disability, actually caregivers and adults with children with disabilities.
Right. And I think the people that we have are either from MNFAC or MOHR, which is a statewide organization of like 104 Minnesota day training nonprofit, providing training and employment for people with disabilities, correct?
It is.
All right. Thank you for helping out with those definitions. So tonight we're going to be talking about our concern about the quality of care and the advocacy, activity of choices for people with disabilities. And we're talking about the possibility of the looming 7% cut in funding on July 1st for day training and residential care services. Right?
That's right.
That's right.
Excellent. All right. So currently, I think the bill is in the House. And what I'd like to talk a little bit about is I want you to start out by give us some history about each of you and how you are connected with programs caring for those with disabilities. And Elizabeth, if we could start with you on the phone, that would be great.
Wonderful. Well, as you said, I am the executive director of RCO, which is located in Laverne, way down in the southwest corner of Minnesota. We serve about 50 people. A little less than half of those work out in the community here in our very small town of about 4,600 people. Most of those work for about 2 hours a day, and that's sort of due to the lack of available jobs in this small community, but all of them are paid minimum wage or higher for those jobs that they work in the community. We also have some work in our building, and that's assembling some small plastic syringes, doing some document shredding, mass mailings, and making buttons. And I have been active with MOHR for all of my 12 years as director here. I've served on several committees with MOHR, and I'd like to stay involved with them so that I can stay up on what's going on throughout the state. Does
Okay.
that kind of answer your question?
That's great. Let's see. How about Anne?
Yes, my husband John and I are parents to a son, Rob, age 37, diagnosed with a chromosomal anomaly called DUP15Q. That is shorthand for the inverted duplication of the long arm of the 15th chromosome.
Aw.
In reality, what that has meant for Rob and for us is he has intellectual delays, developmental delays, epilepsy by the age of 9,
Oh, my.
autism, and depression as an adult. What that means in reality also is that he's not independent. We couldn't leave him at home alone or by himself at any length of time, and we don't at all. Rob has grown to be, in some ways, a charming and fun young man, but he still has multiple medications he takes to manage the epilepsy, now controlled, thankfully, to manage his depression, and other medications as well. That in itself is, that requires some skill, and fortunately, since he's been a young kid, we have partnered with Northeast Residents now in White Bear Lake, a provider of 25 group homes, also a respite home, and an extended day program, and now even a small day program. Early on, Rob attended the respite home, then the day program, allowing for me to work, and then later on, when he was 20, he's moved into a group home. Staffing is of utmost importance in this situation. And I have to be forthright here. There has been a crisis with that component for really some time, and it doesn't just impact the people served. It impacts the entire organization from top down. But for our purposes, of course, it impacts our Rob. And what he needs, first of all, is a safe environment. That is provided, but he requires very nuanced care. That is not just someone off the street who comes in to provide direct care service. It's far more complicated than that. So that's my concern, first of all. And he also attends PAI, a day program, which we're fortunate to have, also in White Bear Lake. There are 4 sites. He attends the autism site, and that program, not the autism program, but all 4 sites serves 262 people. This autism site, though, is growing, actually could be by leaps and bounds due to the fact that there is such a need for autism services beyond high school. And again, staffing is critical. He participates in center-based employment there, but they have developed a new program called Joe's program, which serves the clients that wish to work out in the community, and they do a wonderful job of training.
How about you, Lynn?
Well, I'm Lynn Noren, and I'm the president of an organization called RISE. We support about 2,500 individuals who have disabilities really throughout the state of Minnesota, but primarily in the Twin Cities metropolitan area and across central Minnesota. Our services focus primarily on employment. We do some housing supports as well as community integration services, just helping people to live the best lives possible. I've worked at RISE for almost 40 years, and we've been working on this rate-setting methodology challenge for the past 10 years in partnership with the state of Minnesota. And the 7% challenge is very real to us as an organization. About half of our budget is funded through resources that come through this disability waiver rate setting process. And a 7% 10% cut to Rise would be a little over $850,000. And I can't imagine the task of making that type of reduction without significantly impacting our staff team, their benefits, and it would just be a very difficult problem to try and solve.
And that's just your program.
And that's just our program.
Stephanie, how about you?
Yeah, my husband and I had our daughter Sophie, and she's now 32 years old. She was born with a birth defect of spina bifida, and as a result, she has multiple complex medical issues that we've been dealing with all these years. I mean, it affects, she's paralyzed, so she uses a power wheelchair. She's had eye surgeries, leg surgeries, hip surgeries. She's had 15 brain surgeries. But that said, she's really doing great. And if you were to meet her, I don't know that you'd ever expect that all that's had gone on with her. But as a result, obviously she needs a lot of care. Again, she's somebody also that really cannot be left alone at all. And she lives with us right now still. We have experienced a couple of day programs now. She went through the Transition Plus program out of Hopkins High School, and those programs are really fantastic. And they do help prepare these young people to go into the day programs or into the work experiences that maybe they can follow. Back in the day, I think vocational rehab would assess individuals to see whether or not they could actually compete in the workforce, and she was really told that she probably really can't do too much, certainly not any competitive work.
Right.
But we were really fortunate that we were able to go right into a day program, and we went to Partnership Resources, which is fantastic. They really specialize in the arts program, so they do a lot with art. They do a lot with music. They do volunteer things when they can. They do some work outside of the center. But for the most part, she's been in the center and in a center program and really thrives in it, loves that community, which is a whole story for a whole nother discussion. But the staff, and they do a really fantastic job, but they really have struggled with staffing. It's been a really major issue for them. Their staff is turned over often, and it's mainly because of their salary wages are so light. I mean, I think, and I shouldn't speak for them, but I believe that they're somewhere between $11 and $13 an hour, which, if anybody knows anything about the workforce out there, you really can't find anybody who's willing to work at those wages unless, well, it's just impossible. I mean, I'll go on because we actually moved from PRI then on to Choice, which Choice Incorporated, which is near us, and it's a fantastic day program.
We've had them on.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Interestingly, I couldn't get Sophie into the Choice program for a number of years because they really weren't staffed or structured in order to take anybody with complex needs. Which I've discovered now. And they have now since in the last year, they've taken on Sophie and a friend of hers who both have wheelchairs, and also have some complex needs. I mean, catheterization and some of those things that need to be done on site. And so we feel really fortunate for that because it requires additional staffing. There just is no incentive for these programs to really take on individuals like Sophie who take a lot more time. Obviously, if they were to do any kind of work program, she needs staffing, full-time staffing with that. They needed special equipment. They needed a van that had a lift. They actually have now moved since we've gone over there. They actually made a move with their program and have changed the flooring in the gym so that it's non-latex because they had that issue.
Right.
They've added doorways, automatic doorways for the girls, the two girls now that they have. But these are huge changes that we feel really fortunate that they've been able to do for us. And there is, to be honest, there is no financial incentive at all for them to do these kinds of things. They don't get paid anymore for these individuals. So it's a little frightening to know that there are cuts now coming down the road that could really impact these programs that are doing such a phenomenal job.
So Anne and Lynn kind of touched on this, but how would the 7% cut affect you, do you believe?
Well, I don't really know how the organization's going to deal with this. I do know that they've made staffing changes, and of course, and I can only talk about Choice right now, but they've made the staffing changes, and they've also made a move where they've signed a lease for a different location based on the fact that that money was allocated. So that money was allocated back in 2013. The day programs that are operating right now have known about these dollars that are going to be coming in. They've been anticipating them, and now they're being told they're not going to happen. And so they've made a lot of decisions based on this money, and I don't know how they will continue. And I really fear for the new people coming into these programs. We already have heard that individuals coming out of the transition programs now they're not guaranteed going into any kind of a center-based program. In fact, we know of some people who have had to lobby and work extremely hard to even get their son or daughter actually reevaluated. Now they're being assessed as to whether or not they can really go into those programs or not, or if they should be put into a workforce. And in some cases, they have actually pretty significant disabilities that really prevent them from working, certainly at competitive wages, and yet they're being kind of forced into these situations because the day programs are so strapped. I do know that Choice right now has, I think, a waiting list of 25, he told me. Then he said, I have no idea, and that's before the transition programs actually graduate their students in the spring, of course. And so that's before any of those individuals even, he's got tours going through, I think, in the next week where he's got 19 additional people coming through to look at the program, and he already has a 25-person waiting list for his program.
Elizabeth, you're a pretty small in general organization, being in such a small town. How do you see this affecting your organization?
Well, I'm going to echo some of the fear that has already been stated by the other three and say that I don't know exactly how this will impact us, but it concerns me greatly. Last year, I implemented an aggressive staff wage increase in an effort to retain the quality and dedicated direct support professionals that we already have, because, as the others have stated, it's very difficult to find. And then it's also time-consuming to adequately train those professionals. So when I find people who are caring and really do a great job at their work, I like to be able to pay them enough to make it possible for them to stay with us long-term. I know several of my staff have had to have multiple jobs, and that taxes them, and so then they start to face things like burnout. And I'd like to be able to continue to pay them a higher wage so that they can stick around and have some more quality home time with their own families. I know that the 7% cut approximately would affect us at about, we would lose about $50,000 per year. So, it doesn't sound like a huge amount of money, but when 95% of our funding is from the state, it's drastic for us. So it would certainly cause us to make some difficult choices, things that I never want to have to decide for myself or my staff or the people that we serve, because then what happens to them?
We need to take a small station break, and we will be right back.
Supported by AMPERS and the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Ampers.org has hundreds of music, arts, and cultural stories, including many produced by this radio station. Information and audio at ampers.org. Ampers, diverse radio for Minnesota's communities.
Join KFAI for a full day of special programming on Tuesday, May 1st.
We're kicking off our official 40th birthday party with the morning and afternoon of live broadcast at the Walker Church, 3104 16th Avenue South, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Then join us for an evening of live music from the Hook and Ladder Theater, featuring performances from the Prize Fighters, Baby Galini, They Self, Theo, and more.
And both events are open to the public to commemorate 40 years without boundaries. Stay tuned to KFAI and follow us on Facebook for more information on this day-long celebration.
Programming on KFAI is supported by Community Action Partnership of Ramsey and Washington County's Energy Assistance Program. The Energy Assistance Program helps low-income households pay a portion of their heating bills. Community Action of Ramsey, Washington assists Ramsey and Washington County residents with home energy payments, energy crises, and emergency furnace repairs. They also offer referrals to the Home Weatherization Program. More information about how to apply at 651-645-6470 or at caprw.org.
And this is Disability and Progress. And oh, I am so sorry. Charlene, I did not forget about you. Charlene is my fantabulous research woman. If I didn't have her in here, I would have had a harder time finding headphones and chairs and everything for everyone who came in. So thank you, Charlene. And
I thought you were just passing me over.
No. I would hear about it later, but no, I would never pass you over. We're in the studio with Ann Tulloch, Lynn Noren, and on the phone with Elizabeth Schear, and also in the studio with Stephanie Peterson. And we're talking about the looming 7% cut that might be happening come July 1st. I don't know, we didn't really discuss this, but my mind goes to that there's so much money caught up into these programs. I'm wondering, does anybody know how we compare to other states?
I think actually Minnesota has done a pretty good job compared to some. Oh, I'm Stephanie Peterson.
Excellent.
I do think that we've up to now done a fairly good job, although I will say a lot of changes have taken place over time that have diminished, I think, the effects that maybe were intended initially. And I know there are some states that really do not do a good job, but I'm very concerned about where we're heading right now, because I think that here we've sort of led the way, I think, in some cases, and now we are really going backward, and it's really a worry. I could talk a little bit about just the cost of care, because I think the workforce situation is dire.
Sure.
And has been for a number of years. And so, and the other issue with this whole 7% thing is that they talk about it as though it was a cost of living thing, and it really wasn't. It was actually to get us back to where we really needed to be, because the dollars that were being spent in the programs and for the workforce were never at a level that they needed to be. So that it was a 5% and 1%. There were these increases that were supposed to happen, were approved, and were absolutely needed, necessary, and they weren't necessarily cost of living. They were really to get everybody back to where they sort of needed to be, and now all of that's going away. So it's a terrible problem, and the cost of finding care is really difficult. We actually have to use personal care attendants or people and caregivers in our home when our daughter's at home, because she really has a lot of issues. She has a BiPAP machine. She needs enemas in the evening. She has catheterization. She can't be left alone. So there are a lot of issues, and I need to hire, and I do the hiring for us. And I said to somebody, I just look at it like I was when I was a manager. I sort of look on these individuals almost like interns, because I have to train them. If I can get them to take the job at the rate that I can afford, they're not going to stay. But I have to train them, because they really have to understand all of her care.
Right.
And in order to do that, in order to really find somebody who would be willing to sort of stay and understand and be a long-term caregiver, it would require something close to $20 an hour. If you're looking in the regular workforce. Otherwise, right now, a lot of the day programs, we use a program called AgriCare, and I think they do pay a little bit higher rate. But at $13, $14 an hour, you're asking somebody to come in and do unbelievable work, where they have huge responsibility.
And this isn't exactly the same, but I will say, I feel like I can kind of equal it a little bit. I know people with multiple disabilities have a lot more intense, there's a lot of intense things that sometimes need to be done, and they have to be done. It's not like, oh, you don't really want your kid sitting in front of the TV for 3 hours, but, they have to be done, or they could put the person at risk, or bad things can happen. But I do remember working in a daycare when I was a young teenager and thinking, wow, really, you don't get paid a lot. And you get like 10 kids dumped on you for hours a day. And then these parents wonder, they expect really high things. But I'm thinking, you really don't get paid much. And I can imagine this is the similar situation where you can't afford to pay much, but you really need this intensive, high-quality care. And what do you do?
I work really hard at it. Actually.
Yeah.
And so do the day programs. I mean, they have to work extremely hard to get quality care. I'm actually amazed at sometimes the care that they're able to provide our children. I'm impressed with that, but I know how they're really struggling right now.
So this is Lynn, and I think one thing I'd add that really fits into the conversation well here is that organizations like RISE and other community providers of services were different than regular businesses in the community. The only funding that we get is enacted by action of the legislature. So if you're a Target, for example, and you want to increase the wages for people in your store, you would just increase pricing. But organizations, nonprofit organizations like RISE, we have no ability to change our pricing without action of the legislature. So indeed, to have a cut just takes us a step back. Our most precious resource in meeting our mission is always our staff team members. And without adequate resources to pay their wages and benefits, it's not possible for us to meet our mission. We know that in the state of Minnesota today, there are over 9,000 open positions for direct support workers.
That's a lot of positions.
That's a lot of positions. And so positions go unfilled. At RISE, we had over 40% turnover in our direct support role last year. And so that just makes it really chaotic to provide high quality services.
Elizabeth, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I would just reiterate that we are also struggling with that around 40% turnover every year. And when you've only got 11 to 12 staff to begin with, 30 or 40% is a tremendous amount. You feel the impact. I'm sure you do too, Lynn.
Absolutely.
It's hard to keep people motivated and able to focus on their job when they're also struggling to train their coworkers too.
And I'm sure anybody with a disability in these programs feels, it's like, does my child have the right care? Somebody loving taking care of them? Do they care about their job? Are they going to be there next week? There's probably a whole slew of questions that goes through your guys' mind.
This is Ann again. I might add, thinking of our son Rob, when there's staff turnover and suddenly someone isn't going to come anymore, he always personalizes it and thinks that they must not like him anymore, that they're not coming just because of some problem with him.
Right.
But in truth, it's so much more than that.
Sure.
And I just also must reiterate, speaking from the position of a board member, what that costs an organization to train and retrain. And that takes a lot of time in addition to money. So when those folks leave, it can become a crisis. And in truth, I would say that that's a crisis today. So to add the 7% cut onto that makes some of these, many of these organizations, the nonprofits, really puts them in a very risky position.
This is Stephanie, and I just was going to add, I was at a meeting last night with another day program parent group and talking about this issue and actually hearing some of the parents in the group talking about how it would affect them. And a number of the people in that group said that they would have to quit their own jobs. In fact, they're anticipating they will have to quit their jobs in order to take care of their children if the day program actually either closes or or has to cut hours or cut staff or whatever. So I think that is the huge fear right now from the parent group that we've talked with.
This is Ann once again. Being that we are retired and in our 70s, the idea of keeping our son around and taking care of him would we couldn't do it forever. I mean, we could, you know, it doesn't sound like a good way to spend one's retirement, but you're always a parent.
Right. So what needs to happen? Talk about what you would like to see happen.
So we have bills before the legislature that would restore the 7%. We have bills active both in the House and the Senate, and we really would hope that community members who are listening to the program today would contact their own legislator and support services for people with disabilities and making sure that the 7% cut is restored. The bill is called the Best Life Alliance Bill, and that support would just be really helpful. We want to make this a priority this legislative session, that legislators take action to help us solve.
Anyone else?
No, I would reiterate it. We were just telling the individuals in the meeting yesterday that they need to talk to all of their representatives, not just the ones on the committees, even though the committees are the ones that are really, the finance committees are where all these are really starting. But it's critical that they talk to everybody that's in the legislature right now, because at some point they're going to have to vote on this. And I think they've got to make waves. They have to really make everybody understand how critical this can be. And it's really tough right now in this situation that we're in right now as a state, because obviously the priority right now for the legislature is the toll tax issue that was created by the whole federal issue of the tax issue for the federal taxes. And so it's hard to get everybody's attention on this. And yet this is a really critical issue.
So does anybody have any idea where the legislators or representatives sit on this? What it's looking like? Is there a lot of opposition? Is there a lot of support? What's happening?
Absolutely. This is not a partisan issue, so it's not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's really an issue around people and the supports they need. So we feel that we have some legislative leaders who have taken the lead on these bills. In the Senate, Senator Utke is the lead author of our bill, and in the House, Joe Schumacher is the lead author on the bill. But it comes down to what are the priorities of the state when they make their final funding decisions at the end of session, which will be a little bit later in May. So that's why we really need the public to support us, to contact legislators, to help everyone understand that this is a real serious issue and a crisis for people in your community who have disabilities.
Elizabeth, how are the parents or guardians of your people in your program? Are they pretty strong lobbying, or how does this sit in your community?
Well, it's really hard in our community because we are so far away from the metro area, and so it's hard for us to get the information, and it's hard for us to disseminate that amongst all of the people who need to hear it, and then to activate them. So they are very concerned, but being this far down in the corner, I think they feel like a little helpless. And one thought that I think Ann was speaking about earlier, and how it affects people who receive services when one of their caregivers leaves, a thought that occurred to me is that it really feels like family. And when your family is with you every day and then all of a sudden leaves, I can see how an individual would take that very, very personally.
Right.
So, I think that's their biggest concern down here, too.
And, I would hope that people would understand and talk to people about, you don't have to be at the Capitol. It sure is nice to be, right? But emailing and calling your representatives, that's a big thing. I think that whole part of touching base, to send an email, to send, I'm one of your constituents. We need this support. And I think it's easy for people to feel helpless when they can't just go do something, but I want to make sure people understand that emailing and calling are extremely valuable speak outs.
This is Stephanie again, and what we told people yesterday was probably the easiest way to find all this information is to just go on the Best Life Alliance website. And if they go to the Best Life Alliance, they'll see all sorts of resources and ways that they can connect. In fact, I think they will even provide them with a statement that will help make it understood. Because you know what, a lot of the legislators, they know as little as just the general population about all of this. If they don't have anybody in their families with a disability,
that's right,
they're not that familiar with this. So it is a complex matter. And I think the Best Life Alliance group has done a really great job of sort of summarizing it in a way that can be used. They also have links to your legislators. So, I mean, really, they do make it very easy. So really, if anybody is interested in supporting this and helping to push this along, if they just go to that site and follow the steps there.
What is that site?
It's bestlifealliance.org, I believe.
Okay.
You can just Google Best Life Alliance.
Okay.
It'll take you to it.
I'd like to address the parents in the room, and I wonder, do you guys have a plan B? I mean, I'm not trying to sound doom and gloom, but let's face it, this is kind of a scary thing. So, and it's not like this is the first time that there's ever been any threats of any cut. What do you do? Every time you hear something, do you think about, okay, if this happens, I'm going to have to blank, or if this happens, I will blank? What do you do?
This is Anne speaking again. There have been a number of these issues that have come up over the years. I would say this is one of the scariest. And I think what it propels me to do is to be out there learning more about the issues and to advocate for my son. And truthfully, along with the nonprofits that we are partnered with, I think we're all waiting to see how it shakes out, and then we'll plan then. We might approach this differently had it been a different time, but with all the transition implementing the Olmstead Law, there's been so much that these providers have had to take on, that this is just one more thing. And I think we're all really quite frightened.
Yeah, this is Stephanie. I agree. I think that I'm retired, my husband's retired, so is Anne. and so we have family members, but we also don't want to leave them having to figure all this out. It's hard enough with me not working and trying to manage all of this. And it has propelled me also to become much more of an advocate. But I think also the Olmstead ruling that has taken place that has made a lot of changes in terms of the direction that residential housing is going for the disabled community, as well as the day programs and all of those changes that are happening right now, the workforce thing, the work initiative. I have a lot of opinions on those, because I think a lot of those things have great intention, but they are being interpreted in a way that I think are creating more difficulties for some of the population. The intention for a lot of those was to get this disabled population integrated into the community. And I think in a lot of cases what's happening is it's isolating them more. And it's also reducing choice. I think that, again, the intention was to increase choice and to make more things available maybe for this disabled community. And there are some things that are being written that are, I think, misguiding some people about this, because there's a huge range of people within this disabled population, and not one solution can solve it for everybody. And for us, and when I look at it, there are no residential options for us. The group homes have now been, they're frozen. They're not adding any more group homes, which from our perspective would have been a really good option for our daughter. But those aren't happening now. The individual housing options has gone away. The intention is now for housing to now be, as they say, integrated into the community, which means maybe having individuals with disabilities living in apartments in just general apartment complexes and feeling that's a way to get them integrated into the community. And I can tell you my daughter could never do that. She would be even more isolated. And we would have to supply staffing for her at all times. So then she'd be in her own apartment with a staff by herself.
So it sounds like
no community.
It sounds like what you're telling me is these laws or bills aren't well worded, or they're not. The direction isn't clear,
Well,
so
they're
they
being
can be
interpreted in a
misinterpreted.
way. Yeah, I think there's a committee of people that are looking at how to execute all of this, and some people may be really happy with that. And so that I'm not saying that they're necessarily all bad. I'm just saying they're not. They're sort of eliminating choices that have existed and now are going away. And anyway, I feel like it's a concern for us right now because we really are feeling like there may not be any options for our daughter other than staying in our home and maybe being taken care of by her siblings.
This is Lynn again. Sam, you asked about Minnesota and how we differ maybe from other states. Well, a lot of the policies like the Olmsted Court decision, which really was a court decision that really said people need to be integrated to the extent possible within their communities. And other policies, Minnesota is very fortunate to have had a lot of community-based services all along. We don't have institutional settings in Minnesota. We've been progressive, but part of the challenge, and it is also part of the Olmsted report, is that workforce is a big challenge toward successfully supporting people to be as independent as possible. If we don't have the resources to assure that we have the staff available to really support individuals in their community, then it's not possible to even meet the philosophical intent of those services, right? So that's why the 7% issue is such a big deal at this time when we're all trying to do the best we can to assure that individuals have access to the community to the extent that they choose and that they're not isolated in settings that don't provide enough support for them.
We need to take one more station break and we'll be back to wrap up.
What do you love about KFAI? What's your favorite show on the station? We want to know. Call and tell us everything you love about Fresh Air Community Radio, and you may hear your voice on the air. Take the next step now and call our listener response line at 612-293-9485. That's 612-293-9485. Thanks for listening, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Programming is supported by Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, letting you know that on average, more Minnesotans die from overdose than from traffic accidents. Despite that reality, there is hope. Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge is a drug and alcohol program offering a wide range of both inpatient and outpatient services, whether or not you have insurance. For information on the location nearest you, call 612-FREEDOM or visit mntc.org.
Programming is supported by the Minnesota Music Coalition, presenting the 2018 Minnesota Music Summit, Amplifying Our Stories, April 12th through the 14th. This 3-day music festival and conference brings a taste of South by Southwest to the Twin Cities with keynote conversations, music workshops, industry panels, networking events, talks, and performances by the Minnesota top musicians, including Babes in Toyland's Lori Barbera, rising R&B star Paviel, and transgender rock artist Venus de Mars. For a full list of events, participating venues, and tickets, visit mnmusiccoalition.org.
Billy McLaughlin, who's an amazing guitarist. We have Ann Tulloch, Lynn Noren, Elizabeth Schear, and Stephanie Peterson. We've been talking about the 7% possible cut that could happen July 1st in regards to statewide organizations that help people with disabilities, with employment, with residential. I just want to kind of get your guys' final thoughts, each of you, on the situation.
Well, this is Stephanie. Again, I just want to reiterate how my daughter has thrived with the support that she's been able to get through the 2 programs that she's been part of. And, for her to be able to participate in an art program and sell her art gave her a huge feeling of accomplishment. She's had some small work opportunities, which she absolutely loves, despite the fact that she was paid a sub-minimum wage, which is a whole other issue where that opportunity is going away, and I'm sad about that. And again, it's another one of those issues where there's really good intentions. People are concerned that this population is not getting paid for the work that they're doing, and that may be true for a small segment of this population. It really might be. But there's another big part of this population that has really loved having responsibilities and the ability to work regardless of whether or not that pay is competitive wage or not. And obviously, in many cases, they cannot do competitive work. So it's sad to also see those opportunities go away from these individuals, and the day programs have been really fabulous about providing those kind of opportunities for our kids. And I know that that's going away. And in fact, I know at Choice they opted not to continue with the certificate that they're required to have in order to even offer sub-minimum wages because it was so onerous. And so they're trying to make arrangements with their employers to continue with their clients and allow them to work, pay a competitive wage, but hours get cut, individuals get cut out of that program, and staff of the day program have to actually offset the work in order to make it work for the employers. I mean, there's so many issues surrounding that, and I just feel like it's a sad day when those kinds of opportunities are going away, because they've been really fantastic for my daughter.
Yes, and this is Ann again. I feel like integration itself is a very noble goal, and I think it's the right direction to go. But that it necessitates quality staff. Rob has gone out into the community over the years numerous times. He's gone to theater. He's gone to a rock concert or two. He goes to church with us on Sunday. He does a number of things. He goes to music therapy now with one of the direct care staff. But he's dependent on the quality of those staff, and those very same staff understanding his needs. He's varied. From one day to the next, he can be great and agreeable, and the next day irritable and have a hard time. So risking quality staff is more than the community really can bear. And as to the word community, I think people in Minnesota are still proud of the communities we have here. And this is just more of that. And taking away the quality of the staff over time, it will only do poor things to our quality of community.
This is Lynn. I would just say that I feel like we've come so far in this field, and at RISE, I know we've been able to impact the lives of, literally thousands of people over the years, and we try to provide person-centered supports, and it's I just hope that we're not going to take a step back by reducing the resources that are available to really help people live their best lives possible and make sure that the services individuals need are available to them in the future.
This is Elizabeth, and I would say easily the last 12 years in my employment here in this job has been some of the most rewarding, if not the most rewarding, of all of my career. Up until the last few years, when we entered into this never-ending roller coaster of uncertainty of funding. And I would reiterate what everybody has said and also say that our little tiny organization down here in the corner, and the fact that we've been around for over 50 years, has allowed the people who have grown up here and been born and raised here or have chosen to move here like I did, it has allowed them to stay in the community that they love and want to stay in. So my hope is that our future it becomes more financially secure, that we have a support system for anyone in the state who chooses to make a career out of caring for people, so that we can stop focusing on the worry associated with not knowing where our money is going to be coming from or if it's going to come, and so that we can start focusing on the care that we need to give and that we want to give, the reason we're in this field in the first place.
And Elizabeth, I imagine that there are several of you in these little corners that have, small facilities that have a number of people that it's almost much more personal because you guys really know each other. The community also, I would think, really knows the people that are in that facility and that go to work there or stay there.
Oh, very much so. It's very much a family community. And the community of Laverne is very, very supportive of all that we do.
This is Stephanie. I think what she's talking about in terms of that uncertainty is what I'm hearing from all of the programs. And there is not a business out there that could possibly thrive the way these organizations are thriving with the uncertainty of funding. And I know Lynn mentioned it before that, other businesses, regular businesses, just raise rates or whatever in order to sort of offset extra costs. Well, there is no raising rates here. And instead, now they're losing money that they thought they had. So it's really a double whammy right now for all of these day programs. And they're reliant on money they can't even be certain of. And that even goes, there's even one step further. They get paid by the county by the 15-minute increments of the individuals when they come to the program. So it's not even just that they serve 100 clients and they get so much money all the time for those clients. The money goes in and out based on every time I bring my daughter to a doctor's visit, they lose money. If she misses a day there, they lose all her money. It's a terrible model. I've never understood it, and so that's another issue.
Yeah. I would like to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the time you put into this, and I really hope that for Minnesota's sake, I'm always proud of how we have been a real forward-thinking state and how we move forward, and I hope we continue to do that. So Ann Tulloch, who is a retired physical therapist of a parent with a person with a disability, was joining us. Also, Lynn Noren. Lynn was director of RISE. Elizabeth Schear. Elizabeth is executive director of Rock County Opportunities, a day vocational program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including brain injuries. Also, Stephanie Peterson. Stephanie is part of MNFAC. And I would also like to thank Sherry Wallace. Sherry also helped put all this together, and I know this is no easy feat to be able to do stuff like this. It requires a lot of handling of people's schedules. So thank you, Sherry. This is KFAI 90.3 Minneapolis, 106.7 FM St. Paul. KFAI.org is our website. Charlene Dahl is my research woman. Thank you to her. She also puts in a lot of research time finding people and helping me schedule them. My name is Sam. I've been the host of this show. This is Disability and Progress. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you'd like to be on my email list, you can email me at disabilityandprogress@tcq.net. That's disabilityandprogress@tcq.net.